In today's world, a quiet but intense competition is reshaping the very foundations of global power. This is not a Cold War fought with the same old rules, but a new, complex struggle for influence. On one side, we have NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. This is a long-standing military and political alliance, a cornerstone of the Western world for over 75 years. Its members include the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, and many other European nations. It was born from the ashes of World War II, created to ensure collective security for its members, built on shared values of democracy and individual liberty. At the heart of the rivalry between NATO and the crink nations lies a fundamental disagreement about how the world should be organized. It is a clash of two very different visions for the future of global governance and power. NATO, led primarily by the United States, champions a liberal international order, free market capitalism, international institutions like the United Nations and the World Trade Organization. The belief here is that this framework, established after 1945, has brought unprecedented peace and prosperity. On the other side, a newer, more informal grouping is rising, one that I have come to call crink: China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. These nations do not have a formal treaty like NATO. Instead, they are connected by a shared desire to challenge the world order that they see as dominated by the United States and its allies. They advocate for a multipolar world, where power is more distributed, and where each nation can pursue its interests without Western interference. When we compare the strengths of NATO and the crink bloc, we see a fascinating contrast in power, strategy, and structure. NATO's greatest asset, a formal, integrated military alliance. Article 5. An attack on one is an attack on all. Backed by the United States' powerful military and a technological edge, satellites, stealth aircraft, and naval power. NATO's global partnerships amplify its influence. Japan, South Korea, Colombia, a shared political identity, democratic governance, and free market principles. The crink bloc draws strength differently, not a formal alliance, a loose coalition of convenience. China, unmatched manufacturing and Belt and Road influence across Asia, Africa, and Europe. Russia, hard military edge, massive nuclear arsenal, battle-hardened conventional forces, and hybrid warfare like cyber attacks and disinformation. Iran, asymmetric capabilities and proxy networks. North Korea, nuclear defiance and a large conventional army. The global power showdown between NATO and crink is being waged just as fiercely on the economic battlefield as it is with military posturing. For decades, the world economy has been dominated by the US dollar and institutions guided by NATO members, the World Bank and the IMF. This has given the West immense power, the ability to impose economic sanctions and freeze assets, cutting adversaries off from global finance. The crink nations, led by China, are building alternatives. International UN transactions, development banks like the AIIB, control over supply chains and technologies, microchips, medical supplies, has become strategic leverage. The race to dominate future technologies like 5G, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing is central to this contest. NATO fears security risks from firms like Huawei, prompting de-risking and reshoring efforts to decouple critical supply chains from China. Many nations try a middle path, balancing ties with both blocs. But the pressure to pick a side is growing, reshaping trade blocs and global prosperity. The abstract rivalry becomes dangerously real in several key flashpoints around the globe. The most prominent example today is the war in Ukraine, a tragic arena where NATO and Russia's contest plays out. NATO armed and funded Ukraine's defense and imposed crippling sanctions on Moscow. The South China Sea is another flashpoint. China's 9 claims clash with neighbors and U.S. security ties. Beijing has built and militarized artificial islands, and freedom of navigation operations challenge those claims. The Middle East, Iran's nuclear program and proxy networks, North Korea's missiles, each region pulls in outside powers. Russia and China use diplomatic tools like UN vetoes to shield partners, complicating international responses. Local disputes become global chess matches where miscalculation could spark wider conflict. This grand geopolitical struggle is not just abstract, it has profound impacts on ordinary lives. Families torn apart, memorials and vigils, a generation scarred by violence. Beyond battlefields, economic measures like sanctions affect gas and food prices at home. Trade wars and disrupted supply chains raise costs for electronics, clothing, and household goods. The rivalry also plays out digitally. Censorship in some states and disinformation campaigns in others erode trust. This weakens free press, elections, and public trust in institutions. Smaller nations face pressure to align, losing autonomy and risking being drawn into conflicts. Development aid, infrastructure projects, and vaccine diplomacy become tools of influence. For billions, these choices determine economic opportunity, political freedom, and physical security. As we stand here today, on August 25, 2025, the future of global power hangs in a delicate and uncertain balance. The lines are being drawn, and the stakes could not be higher for everyone. Washington, Brussels, Moscow, Beijing. Their decisions ripple outward. Those ripples shape the daily realities of billions, markets, families, and communities. Understanding this dynamic is crucial. The outcome will define the kind of world we and our children will live in for the foreseeable future. Subscribe for deeper analysis and stay informed.